This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Doc here for DetroitBeardCollective.com, Detroit's premier grooming company. Visit DetroitBeardCollective.com for quality beard care products. Detroit Beard Collective is a Michigan-based company that takes pride in providing quality and affordable products for men to care for their beards. Jock uses the beard soaps when his rec league hockey team is growing out their beards. If you're rocking a beard this winter, you definitely need to check out the Beard Butter Leave-In Conditioning Beard Balm. Beard Butter will make your beard feel softer, better smelling than ever before. Go visit DetroitBeardCollective.com and at checkout, use the promo code DSP for 15% off savings. That's DetroitBeardCollective.com, promo code DSP. I want to tell you about our newest sponsor, Team Top Cat Sales. Are you looking for team apparel for your high school, your club sports team, or corporation? Look no further than Top Cat Sales, located on the east side of Main Street in downtown Royal Oak, between 11 and 12 Mile. Through founder and former University of Michigan QB John Wangler's leadership, Top Cat Sales has developed a tradition of selling and distributing custom Adidas team apparel with the highest quality and best service. Get your organization, school, or club team all in with Adidas today by going to TopCatTeamSales.com. That's TopCatTeamSales.com. Also, follow Top Cat on Twitter at Team Top Cat.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Often imitated and never duplicated. Thanks for checking in again on the Detroit Sports Podcast. This is the Doc and Jock Sports Podcast. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, the future Powerball winner. You're looking at him, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. What's up, cuz?
What would you do with all that money? What would you buy? Would you buy a sports team?
That is the question everyone's asking. Well, I've read all the advice that people like Mark Cuban's giving, like the New York Times is giving. I would not even take the lump sum. I would take the annuity over 30 years, $22 million a year. I'd be like A-Rod. I'd be like Miguel. Just collect $22 million every year and just kind of buy a couple houses, take care of the family, and just try to be as anonymous as possible. And me and my wife had a hilarious conversation. You know what she said to me?
What?
Very smart, very ingenious, very slick. She goes, oh, no problem. If you win it, you got to put it in my name so that none of your patients can claim sexual harassment. No one's going to sue you. All the places you visited, you might end up with little Johnnies all over the place that you never had. I said, honey, that's a great point. Very good point that when I win the Powerball, I'm going to put it in the wife's name, try to be as anonymous as possible, and just relax, have a good time, and maybe start a broadcast empire. You never know. Maybe the Doc and Jock channel.
Ooh. just taking over internet radio, huh?
What would you think? What would you do if you had won, a $1.5 billion? What would happen if it doesn't win tonight? If no one hits on Wednesday, it could hit $2 billion.
Yeah, it goes to $2 billion. That's what they're estimating anyways for Saturday's drawing.
Woohoo.
You know what? I would legit buy a radio station.
Yeah.
I would.
Just buy the station.
Right. I'm tired of knocking on doors. Like you said, we're coming in through the window. It doesn't matter. We're kicking it down. So, yeah, I'd buy a radio station is what I do.
So how much are you in for now for this very drawing?
I haven't bought anything yet. I'm gonna be going out here shortly. I did spend, I think $40 on Saturday night's drawing. I think I ended up winning like $5 because I think we got like 2 numbers right or something like that. So I'll probably go spend another $20 and then that'll be it.
Dude, the odds are so sick. I mean, people are actually coming up with the stats and the odds of things that would happen besides winning the Powerball. They said that the odds of the Lions winning 10 consecutive Super Bowl championships in a row are more likely than you winning the Powerball. Ain't that some nonsense?
I mean, hell must have froze over, right?
Or the very moment that we win the Powerball, we hit, oh, congratulations, 20 people have hit it as well.
Yeah,
so you got to split it 20 ways. But
so instead of $2 billion, you get
a share.
Yeah, a small portion.
Would you ever do a pool where you kind of pool like $50 at your job and be willing to trust people to do that? Because I have thought about doing it because you have more chances of winning. But, the trust factor with, people mixing tickets, with the fact that there isn't an organized way of doing it. The person that buys the tickets has to make a copy. Everybody gets a copy of all the numbers, so no tomfoolery takes place. But when it comes to $1.5 billion, you might be, finding a person out there in Aruba that won it.
It's possible, man.
Have you ever
It's
done
possible.
a group?
I've done a pool. I have. When I was at when I worked at a foreclosure law firm in the area, we did that a couple times, and it never really worked out. You never won anything, but you do have to trust your coworkers, and that's kind of becomes a difficult thing. While we're talking about this, it's really funny because I'm getting a text message from my buddy who just sent me a meme and says, when I win the lotto, I'll still be an asshole. I'll just be an asshole with my own fucking tank. And it shows a tank firing off a missile.
Man, it's the talk of the town. $1.5 billion. I cannot fathom that kind of money. And looking into the research, Michigan's not a state where you can be anonymous. There's actually 6 states, and Ohio is the closest one here, where if you win, you don't have to identify yourself. You can report it anonymously. Michigan's not one of them. You have to go up there. And, one guy did it, and he actually put the check in front of his face back in 2014. But it's tough there. But there is sites to tell you what to do if you are lucky enough to win the Powerball, of kind of some things you need to do in terms of relaxing, taking a break, not blowing all the money up front, what kind of team to surround yourself with, and how to avoid all the problems that so many people face. Because just because you have a boatload of money doesn't mean you're going to be happy. You will be for sure that 24 hours when you win it, but it can set off a whole chain of events that could be nasty.
When me and my wife were talking about it, the one thing I would hate to have to deal with is everybody coming looking for a handout.
You have to, though.
That would be the worst. No, it'd just be the worst to have to deal with it.
You're sitting on $600 million.
I'm just saying, man, you've got friends that you haven't seen in years, and they're showing up at your doorstep like, hey, can you hook a brother up? We lost touch, bro. I don't even know who you are anymore.
Don't worry, our agreement's still in place. You still get that cool $750. $750.
It went up.
You get you get the $750.
I thought it was $500 I was getting.
That was $900 million. When it's at $1.5 billion, up to $750.
Yes.
All right.
That's what I'm talking about.
Would you still do a podcast if you hit the big number?
Dude, we're gonna have our own radio station.
That's it. Okay, perfect. All right, sounds good. Listen, man. As well as the Powerball drawing, there's a lot actually to look forward to this week in the world of Detroit sports. I mean, the new general manager's here, the savior. It's a new day. I'm excited. I'm very shocked at your temperament at the news because we talked about it. The 2 big names were either from Green Bay or New England. As the search continued, the Kirchner dude from Seattle was thrown into the mix, but the Lions went out and they brought in a guy from New England, by all accounts was groomed to do this. And I'm thrilled. I'm more than happy. I was like, yes. I mean, they interviewed Sheldon White. He had no chance of getting that.
None whatsoever.
I feel bad, but how embarrassing for that. You interview the guy on Friday. Within 4 hours, they're interviewing. They're like, okay, we got our guy. He's coming in. It's Bob Quinn. Boom, lock it down. But hey, it's a new day for the Lions. I'm super excited because in the end, all you can do is put yourself in the position to have the right guy. And dude has been at New England for so long. This is a great time to be a Lions fan because I have all confidence that at least right now, before all the decisions are made, we're sitting good. It's a good decision. It's a new day for the Lions. I'm shocked by your reaction. Tell everybody what the hell you thought. I was shocked. I thought you'd be a little bit more excited.
Yeah, and when the news broke, I was not wrapped up in it at all. I just kind of like, all right, well, it's not the guy I wanted. So it almost like when you lose the Powerball, right? You're like, oh, damn, well, I guess we got to move on with our day. So I wasn't initially excited. But the more and more I look at this guy and the more and more research I do on him and the more and more, I guess, show prep for today that I did get a little bit more excited. And those juices started kind of flowing a little bit. And I did get a little bit more geeked up about Bob Quinn. Time will tell. And I'm trying to reserve as much of my opinions for the long haul here. You're right. He has been groomed for this position ever since basically day one. He sat there. He started off as an equipment manager at the University of Connecticut, and he's worked his way up to a player personnel guy within the New England Patriots, doing everything along that way. So he knows what he's doing. At least he has experience in everything that he's going to be doing, which is a good sign. And this is the first time that the Lions have gone outside the organization to make a hire like this. They actually have a guy with experience. So this is a totally different shoe than most Lion fans are used to wearing right now.
To refresh my memory, who was the guy that was on your radar?
I wanted Kirchner. I wanted the guy from Seattle.
That would have been a great hire, too. I mean, look at that personnel. You got a team that's, been now in the playoffs consecutive years. They got to the Super Bowl back-to-back, so that's fine. But, the one area you could say for Bob Quinn that's a little concerning, never been a general manager. He's been in the player personnel department, but he's been privy to some high-level information. And, when he came out for the press conference, you kind of knew, okay, if this guy's groomed from New England, he's going to be curt. He's going to be to the point. He's going to reiterate the same point over and over. from the media entertainment standpoint, it's not going to be the best general manager in terms of getting info, but I like the fact that he handled the media questions and said, listen, there's no timetable. I'm going to go do ABC, ... He handled it, and he didn't give any long, elaborate BS answers. He was just like, I got a job to do. I'm going to do it. I'm going to take my time, and that's that. And he seemed poised, and he seemed like he's from New England, and it's a new day, and I'm fully excited. I have full confidence that I believe that he's going to do his best to put forth a winning effort for Mrs. Ford. And don't get it twisted. He reports to Mrs. Ford, not to Rod Wood. They made it clear yet again. Bob Quinn's going to report to Mrs. Ford.
You know what upsets me a little bit? He was sitting there keeping his Boston accent in check the entire time. He went to go
thick.
say,
It's thick.
It is. He went to go say Junior. How do you spell that? It's like Juuuron.
He's like, hell no, I haven't fired Jim Caldwell. I got to go get my chowder. Right.
Come
Come
on
on
I don't know
now.
why he kept that in check. Just let that thing go, man. Sit there and New England it up all day long up there during your press conference. What are you doing?
Do you think he's got a challenging job his first couple of months here in Detroit?
I think he has stepped into just a completely different world, man. You got to realize you've got Calvin Johnson, who's debating on whether or not he wants to come back or not.
Got to address that.
And he's essentially been the face of this franchise for years now. One of the best players in the league. So you've got a guy who's got 1 foot out the door, 1 foot in the door. You have no idea what he's doing. You've got Jim Caldwell, where you don't know what you're doing with him, whether or not you want to keep him, you want to replace him. You've got no clue. Everybody's pointing to the 2 assistants in New England, and everybody says that, yeah, they're ready for the job. I don't want Josh McDaniels. He totally effed it all up when he was over there in Denver. It was brutal. I mean, he did get Tim Tebow, and Tim Tebow did get him a playoff win, which is something that the Lions haven't had in years. But still, do you really want Josh McDaniels? I don't. And Matt Patricia, I don't know. I like him, but I don't know if I like him as a head coach. I'm not really sure. And then you got Jim Caldwell, who can't get 11 guys on the field. Yes, I think his coaching, at this point, the issue with the coaching is a major concern. And that's a very difficult position to be put into, especially if you're a brand new hire as a general manager. All that being said, you now have to figure out what you want to do with Matt Stafford because his contract's going to be coming up. And he seemed to be a little bit high on Matt Stafford. He wasn't overly praiseful of the guy, but he said that he's a guy that we'd like to build around. Do you really want to build around Matt Stafford? Do you really want to give him $140 million? Because that's what his next contract's going to be. It's going to be astronomical. So now you have to ride or die with Matt Stafford. So I think what he has stepped into is a roster that needs to kind of be overhauled. You've got the face of the franchise possibly considering retirement. You've got to find a new head coach, and you've got to figure out what you want to do with your quarterback and how you want to address your quarterback. So I think he stepped into a very difficult position.
Now, I know you're supposed to have that press conference, but just by judging how things went down, maybe they could have delayed it maybe 1 or 2 more days. Maybe he comes in, gets the scope of the landscape in terms of Caldwell. Then you maybe make the move and make the decision first. Then you announce Bob Quinn as the guy coming in, hired Friday. He was still in Boston. So he just came off the plane, kind of walked through the complex. And then, when you come out at your first press conference,
he was like, how do I get to Allen Park?
30-second meeting with Jim Caldwell.
Where am I going? Like I-90 what?
That was probably the only point that was a little bit interesting, was that he only had met with Jim Caldwell 30 seconds up until that point. But, all that stuff that he was saying about not knowing Jim Caldwell and all that stuff, that's
he knows
PR. He knows exactly. Yeah. In the AFC, Jim Caldwell was there. He knows what's up. He's seen film. He kind of now just has to decide, is Jim Caldwell the best option for my organization based on the scouting department that I want to put together?
And that's exactly where they're at right now.
Decision-making.
Who else is out there that can do a better job than Jimmy C? Who else? Who do we have out there that can come in and do a much better job than this guy that we have currently?
If there's an age-defying, lotion, potion out there, there is a guy who's won a couple Super Bowls that may not be past his prime, that is doing the interview circuit in former Giants head coach Tom Coughlin. That guy's got experience. It may take time. He may croak on the way of doing it, but he's got experience, and he's won everywhere he's been, and he's won at the highest levels. The problem is, though, he's a complete hit or miss. He's either going to come in right away and make some changes, or he's going to take Matthew Stafford and have some rough seasons, because the last couple with the Giants weren't that good.
That's true. But if in his process of trying to figure out if Jim Caldwell is the guy or not, he's got to then look and see if a guy like a Tom Coughlin, if a guy like a Matt Patricia, a guy like Josh McDaniels.
Maybe a Terrell Austin on your own staff.
Exactly. A guy like Terrell Austin. If these guys can come in and do a much better job and still not lose this locker room, because this locker room has come out and they've basically nailed their hands to the cross saying that we won't go unless Jim Caldwell is here for the ride, which I think is stupid. And they're going to play anyways because you're signed to contracts, you big dummies. You're going to play. It doesn't matter who your coach is. You're going to play.
But Bob Quinn's got at least 2 years of kind of free reign where he can make his moves. And if there's got any guys that are not on board, he'll cut them. There's no problem. I don't feel in terms of personnel that doesn't weigh into any of his decision making. He's going to put together the best organization and try to put together the best roster that's going to win. And like you said, he's not going to put a timetable on it, but you're going to see an effective draft strategy. You're not going to see any more Ebron picks. I almost can tell you guarantee that they're going to be effectively drafting. They're going to probably look to accumulate draft picks and look to move guys. And I wouldn't be surprised if he just decides to reach out to Calvin, see what his interest is in, and then maybe even cut him. You know, Calvin's got a big cap number. The one factor that you do know is that he's going to ride with Stafford. He's going to keep Stafford around and potentially build around him. But that for certain, is I think he looks around and goes, okay, Stafford's the guy. We'll roll with this for a while. But he's got time.
See, that's where I want to stop you right there. Because I want to ask you a question. All right? Because they're at this point with the way they're structured right now, with what they have on this roster and what they've got coming back, they're kind of in this weird spot where they can either take a step forward or they can take 3 steps back and kind of begin this rebuild process. So if Kelvin leaves, what do you have? All you really have is Ziggy Ansah, right?
No, it's wrong. You do have, now a little bit more stable secondary. Darius Slay, Abdul Quddus. You have guys that you can maybe plug in terms of free agency and the draft. You have the framework, and you
have guys. You don't have a stud. All right, you've got Ziggy Ansah on that defense, and that's pretty much all you've got right now.
And DeAndre Levy, we got to wait and see what he's going to do.
Exactly, but you don't know. He's a coin flip. So now you look at this offensive side. What do you have on this offense? You've got a Golden Tate who basically came here for the money. You've got Matt Stafford who is hit or miss.
I'll tell you what you got. You got 7 and 9. That's what you got. You got 7 and 9 talent.
Exactly.
So if you want to move forward, let's see what you got.
Would you move a guy like Matt Stafford? Would you trade him away? If somebody was out there and you went calling, you said, hey, you interested in a quarterback? I got a guy who can put up massive numbers for you, who can do certain things for you if you have a wide receiver. Would you be willing to trade with me?
100%. Yeah, I would be willing to listen to whatever Bob Quinn said. Until he does something that makes me go and look at him cross-eyed, I believe that his plan will be formulated with calculated moves, and he'll use facts, and he'll do what's in the best interest of making this Lions team a competitive team. And if that means trading Stafford for 3 draft picks and impact players, then you do that. If that's what he wants to do, I wouldn't be outraged by anything that he does outside of saying that Jim Caldwell is my head coach. If he says that, I'm going to be a little bit concerned, because then all the questions will start regarding, hey, man, are you a puppet or are you the real GM? Because I don't see a scenario. I agree with everybody else that's speaking on the matter. You take a new job, you're the guy in charge, everyone's saying it's on you, then Jim Caldwell's not the guy. I want to roll with guys that I trust and that I know. And hey, even if it's wrong, I still roll with people that I chose. The organization, the Lions organization, is judging him based upon his choices. And so I wouldn't take anybody from a former regime. I'd start new. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Be ultra professional, but I'm bringing my crew in, and we're going to start over. And I'll tell you, and I'll be perfectly clear and open as to what I'm thinking along the way.
That's why I lay this down then. This will be painful. It's going to suck next year. It's going to be brutal for 2016. You'll probably be the laughing stock in most of the NFL, all right? Because there's always one team who's way worse than you. I would get rid of Calvin. I'd let Calvin go. All right, I wouldn't even try to get him to come back. Just let him go. Save that money. After that, I would sit there. I would trade away Matt Stafford. There's a team in Houston right now, the Texans. Texans need a quarterback. You trade him away. You get some draft picks for him.
Trading Stafford. Woo-hoo.
Get some quarterbacks for him, and it puts him in a great spot because he's from Texas, for one, and 2, they've got wide receivers down there who can play up to or at Calvin's level, if not higher, right now. So he's in a good spot. And on top of it, they've already got a superstar on defense. They can do things down there. They're on the precipice of possibly becoming a Super Bowl champion contender. So it makes perfect sense there. So now you have draft picks. You roll into this draft. You can now start plugging holes. The big problem is there's not really a quarterback out there that you're just like, wow, we got to get this guy. This guy will help our team. That's the only issue with doing this. It's like the Lions. They're always either a year ahead or a year late whenever they've got to do these plans. They can never get it right on the head.
Well, the blessing of this podcast is we get a chance to get outside opinions, and Dan Miller will be on the line shortly. We're going to take a quick break, regroup, and we're going to have Dan Miller, Fox 2, and the radio voice of your Detroit Lions. On the line next on the Detroit Sports Podcast with Doc and Jock.
Doc and Jock here for Fanatic U. If you're looking for some sweet sports swag and you love your Detroit teams, and I mean you really love your Detroit teams, you got to check out fanaticu.com. Check out fanaticu.com, use promo code DSP, save 15% even off the clearance items, and get the coolest gear out there and rock your Red Wings shirt, rock your Lions shirt, rock your Piston apparel. Wear it till the wheels fall off. Michigan State, you know what? They got it too. Check out Fanatic U. They have 6 locations all over Metro Detroit. Check them out, fanaticu.com. All right, on the phone with us right now is Fox 2's lead sports anchor. He's kind of the head man in charge over there. And the voice of your Detroit Lions, Dan Miller. Dan, what's going on?
How you guys doing?
We're excellent. We're real excited to have you on right now. Lions are making a lot of moves and a lot of news right now. They just hired Bob Quinn as their new general manager. We want to get your impression of this new hire.
I think in theory, it was the right way to go. And I can't sit here, and that's why I kind of will hedge it a little bit and say, Bob Quinn is absolutely going to be the guy that rescues this franchise, and he's going to be the guy that points it in the right direction. I don't think anybody knows. I mean, we've seen hotshot personnel guys, hotshot assistants, coordinators that get hired that either work or don't work. So, he'll ultimately be judged by his body of work. But the thinking in hiring him, which is coming from a great organization, understanding what made that organization great, working with people that have done it in a variety of different ways, through free agency, through the draft, through undrafted free agents, through getting veterans that other teams kind of cast off that nobody thought fit anymore, and they fit in well with them. And then also I think this was very important to going outside the organization. I mean, to me, this search was different than any search this team had in probably 50 years because it didn't involve Mr. Ford. It did involve an established NFL personnel guy that has built Super Bowl teams, Ernie Accorsi. And going outside the organization was obviously different as well. Really, the only other time they did that was Matt Millen. And while knuckleheads like me thought that had a good chance of working, he clearly in the end wasn't qualified. And now you've gone out and gotten somebody who is a football guy, who has been doing this, and you bring him in there. So it's a long way of saying, I think, everything in terms of the thought process that went into making it work was great. Now it's up to him to see what exactly he is that he's in the job.
Dan, Happy New Year. It's great catching up with you. Coming after that press conference, were you surprised at all that after the initial press conference that Quinn did not decide or had not decided the fate of head coach Jim Caldwell?
We all kind of get it in our head of what we think the timeline's going to be. And I kind of thought, and I was not correct, I kind of thought when he sat down with Mrs. Ford and Ernie Accorsi and Rod Wood that he would say, all right, here's my game plan. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to bring in terms of a staff or keep in terms of the staff. So I thought there would be a good idea by the time he stood up there as to whether or not he's going to do it. Probably to his credit, out of respect for Jim Caldwell and the job that he's done and the time that he's put in this league, he's given him a chance to sit down and get to know him before he makes that decision. I don't think it's going to be very long. I mean, I would, just me guessing, I'd be surprised if it's done, not one way or the other decided by the end of the week. So, we'll see what happens there. But, yeah, I mean, I guess probably I was a little surprised, but now in thinking about it, it's not that surprising. It's just like, guys, I can make an argument either way, keep him or let him go. And I think that it's an arguable point that people can disagree on, that I can see both sides of. But, the timeline is his. The decision is his. And I think, if we all want this guy to be successful, which I know I do and I think most people do, then you got to let him do it his way. Because, anything that isn't his way doesn't give you a true measure of what he is. So, my take is have at it, make your decision, take your time, see if he's your right guy, and go from there.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, Dan, but I'd be remiss if I didn't. What does your gut tell you that how this is going to play out with Jim Caldwell?
Man, I don't know. My gut is he sticks around, and that's based on nothing. That's just based on the fact that I think in some ways, if you keep him there, it gives you a year to kind of figure the organization out. See if, in fact, this guy that the players and this is true, the players love the guy, and they love playing for him, and seeing if that, in fact, translates into turning next season into a more positive season than they had this year. So my gut is, and believe me, I'm not saying this with any conviction, but my gut is he stays. But I'm not going to be surprised either way. I think that it's an arguable point, and I unless you're a fly on the wall, when those two sit down to talk, you're not going to know whether or not, using his word, they mesh or not. So we'll have to wait and see.
Coming out of the introductory press conference, Quinn seemed to be a little bit high on Matt Stafford. He wasn't overly praisive of him, but he did have some nice things to say about him. Do you see Quinn building around Matt Stafford, and if so, how?
I do. I think that's what he'll do. I had a chance to interview him in a little more relaxed setting after the press conference, and I asked him about that, and he said, Matthew Stafford's a good player, and I'm glad he's on our team. And I said, when you're taking a job like this, is that an important piece of the puzzle that you already have the quarterback? And I'm paraphrasing, but he said that's huge. He said, when you're walking into a situation, you have that quarterback, and I think the interview's up on fox2detroit.com somewhere. When you're walking in, that's a big piece of the puzzle that's there already. So, unless he's doing a big sell job, which I don't think he is, and frankly, I thought all along that anybody that cut Matthew Stafford loose would be foolish because there's nothing better out there. And I do think he's a good player. So I think, they will build around him. And I think that's one of the keys for this team is figuring out that offensive line, obviously figuring out what Calvin Johnson wants to do. And, to me, the two big off-season, and now it's three because of Calvin, but the two big off-season things they have to do, figure the offensive line out and find themselves a number one defensive tackle, which I don't see on the roster right now. Love the way Haloti was playing at the end of the year. I don't know if he'll be back or not, but that defensive tackle spot's one they really need to look at. Speaking
of Calvin Johnson, how do you see this kind of playing out as the offseason moves along here?
Calvin's Calvin, man. He's his own dude, and he doesn't, we know now that he had told several teammates that this was, I'll hedge saying definitely it, but certainly quite possibly it before the game. Guys knew that Calvin was thinking about retiring. So I don't know how it's going to play out. My guess would be there's probably, again, just a guess, that there's probably a better chance he comes back if Caldwell's back, but I don't know that to be true. You could get a new coach in here who could call him up and maybe sell him and tell him, here's what we're going to do. There's a familiarity there with Caldwell and with Cooter that maybe he's more comfortable with. But again, Calvin doesn't really give counsel to many people, and he keeps his thoughts to himself, and he's a quiet guy, so it's tough to know what he's thinking. So I'm up in the air. I could see that thing going either way as well. I could see Calvin saying, you know what, it's a month out. I feel better. I got another year in me. Let's go back and do it again.
Now, Dan, Quinn was brought in here because of his experience at New England. Now, that organization has done great things now for the better part of a decade. What are the factors that you see in New England that made them such a fascinating and successful organization, and one that hopefully brings in an executive for the Lions that'll help us out?
Well, the word he used is the correct one, consistency. It's having a vision, sticking to the vision, not changing who you think you are every couple of weeks. I mean, look, it certainly helps to have Tom Brady, but outside of that, they've done it with a bunch of different casts. It's like San Antonio and the way they've done it, with different guys from David Robinson to Tim Duncan, the guys that they've built around. But then there have been other players that have filled roles around them. And it's been Brady and then other players that have filled roles around them. And they draft well. They understand what they're looking for. They don't go overboard in terms of NFL free agency, which I think is proven to not work in this league. They find guys that fit their system and they bring them in. They have a keen eye for talent, both pro and college, and a keen eye for people that will fit the Patriot system. So he really outlined that well, I thought, during the press conference in terms of consistency, knowing who you are, sticking to who you are, having a plan, sticking to the plan, and moving forward. And, it's hard to beat consistency. I mean, you look at, and people have talked about this, I think he may have touched on it the other day, the Pittsburgh Steelers and how few general managers they've had, and, New England and the job that they've done, and just some of the more successful organizations, just how they've kept things the same over the years. And that unique ability to just kind of have a singular voice or very few voices can lead to a lot of success if you're sticking to the same system over time. And I think that New England has certainly done that. And guys, look, that's what they need here. I mean, you have to almost by necessity when it's not working, but you can't keep changing all the time. And, we're a Tampa 2 team. No, we're going to be a big, tough team. No, we're going to be a West Coast team. No, we're going to be a vertical team. You can't do that. I mean, you got to be something and then stick to it. And I think that's when Tom Lawand and Martin Mayhew were fired, while those guys were people that I care about and I got to know well and know their families and they're in a results-oriented business and it didn't work. And I looked at it as here's an opportunity to change the direction of the franchise and to get a singular direction for the franchise, a singular voice and consistency and vision, and start moving forward with that. And that's where they are right now. And now they've chosen the guy to do it, and now he's got to do it.
Now that they have their guy in place, what do you think his first move as transforming that front office, like you said, is going to be?
Yeah, I think, obviously the head coach is the first thing that he's got to deal with. And then, I think he'll take a look at the scouting staff. A lot of these guys know each other. They see each other all over. So I'm sure he's familiar with a lot of them, and he'll get to know them. And I'm sure there will be changes. And we'll wait and see what they are. Oftentimes in these situations, scouts' contracts run through April or May, right after the draft. So you see, because the work has been put in on this year's draft, and believe me, he's been probably in on New England's and he knows what's going on. But because these guys have done the work for this year's draft, they may well stick around through the draft, and some of them may survive after that, and some of them may not. I can't tell you how many will or how many won't or how that'll work, but I don't know that those changes are going to happen this week or next week. Oftentimes when you see a change like this, you'll see it go through the upcoming draft, which is, obviously a couple of months away. And then after that come the more significant changes. But look, when you bring in a new guy like this and the thought process from Mrs. Ford and Rod Wood is to change the culture, to change the voice, it's hard to see a scenario where he wouldn't go in there and make significant changes in and around that front office. So I think that's coming. We'll just have to wait and see. And that's not me wishing anybody out of a job. That's just the natural progression when you make changes like this in the NFL, or in most businesses for that matter.
All right, Dan, we'll get you out of here on this. This is a little bit more of a personal question for you. After 10 years, your partnership with your broadcasting team is going to begin a new venture with WJR. What emotions do you have headed into the 2016 season as you start this new chapter in your guys' career?
We had a great relationship with WXYT. They were phenomenal to me. And I don't have a complaint in the world about the way that they treated me. I know Brandy would say the same thing. They let us do our job. We really didn't have much in the way of interaction with them, which was great because they knew what we had to do. We knew what we had to do. And if they needed something, they called us. If we needed something, we called them. They weren't the kind of people that micromanaged, and that was appreciated. So I have nothing but positive things to say about my experience there. My limited contact so far with WJR has been fantastic. I'm looking forward to working with them. And, in a lot of ways, guys, we are, and I think one of the misnomers out there is that we're employees of the team. We're not. We're employees of the radio station. Now, the team obviously has a voice in whom their voices are, but when all is said and done, we're sitting up there on Sunday and doing a game, and where it comes out isn't the most important thing in the world. What comes out to us on Sundays is the most important thing in the world, and WJR has done nothing but led us to believe that they're going to be a great partner for us. We look forward to that. There's a lot of tradition there with great history in terms of guys that have been there before, calling Lions games, Bob Reynolds, Van Patrick, guys like that, Ernie, obviously, George now. So we're excited about it and looking forward to it. And it's, even through the tough times, I tell people this is a great job. There's 32 jobs like this in the entire world, and I'm blessed to have one. And I'm looking forward to, starting next season and with a new partner that's excited to have the Lions there, and off we go. And I think the best thing is, the Lions are doing some good things that I think have the fans excited. And if you can get some of the equity back with the fans, the best part of our job is seeing the fans happy. And if they can win some games and start moving this thing in the right direction, that takes care of everything.
Sounds good, Dan. We appreciate your time. Thanks for stopping in. Thanks for giving us your insight on the Lions here. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Just want to say thank you to Dan Miller. You can check him out on Fox 2. Again, he's the lead sports anchor over there. He's the big guy. He's the hot shot over there. So you're going to want to check him out. Also, you can catch him when the Lions are playing next season, 2016. Check him out on WJR. But speaking about the Lions here, do you think Bob Quinn should call Nick Saban? I mean, I know you watched the national championship game. And let's be honest, Nick Saban won that game for Alabama. And there's been all this talk about, has he done enough in college football to where maybe he warrants going back to the NFL and somebody giving him the shot. And according to Bob Quinn, the head coach as well as the front office has to work together. And if Nick Saban has Bob Quinn's ear, or vice versa, Bob Quinn has Nick Saban's ear, and maybe they twist that ear a little bit, maybe we get Nick Saban as a head coach. What do you think?
You know, Nick Saban's the king of Tuscaloosa. He's got, he's very close to Bear Bryant's record of 6 national titles. He's got 4 national titles at Alabama, 1 at LSU. And the dude is just the king of college football. In this era, why would you go back to the NFL? He's got complete control. Alabama is relatively small in terms of, the sports scene. You got boosters that bought the dude's house. If he, what kind of salary money would you have to give him? I mean, if he comes in and wants $10 million, they'll probably give him 12.
I think he already has $10 million. I think that's what his contract is.
Yeah, so what more do you need? You got control.
He gets paid ridiculous money, and
he's got the pick of the litter in terms of talent. Alabama's not going anywhere.
It's insane.
So if he went there, it would be purely ego-driven and to prove people wrong.
That's the thing. You got to realize, college coaches, they basically work 364 days a year. They might take Christmas off, and they're probably not even doing that. They're probably hunkered down in their basement watching game film on that day. So they work all year round. You can come to the NFL, you don't have to work all year round.
You do if you got to be a successful Super Bowl winning coach.
But it's totally different because they're on almost 20 hours a day in college. In the pros, they're on, I don't know, maybe 15 to 18 hours a day. It's a little bit of a break. The workload's a little bit less there. So you can have a more normal life. And if you come here and you have a general manager who's going to work with you and get you the players that you're asking and requesting, I think it's a beautiful marriage because Nick Saban was in an interview and he basically came out and said that's why it didn't work in Miami for him. He wanted them to go out and get a guy like Drew Brees. Instead, they bring back Joey Harrington and I think it was Cleo Lemon. I mean, who and
exactly.
What?
That's a good thing to say. Put that out there every day. I wanted Drew Brees, and they gave me that.
Well, you know what I'm saying? I mean, you now have a Hall of Fame quarterback because he recognized the skill and the talent in Drew Brees and realized, yeah, I know he had a torn labrum, but he's going to come back and he's going to be just fine. It's no big deal. Instead, they basically got him a guy who likes to play the piano and somebody who should be working at the Quickie Mart bagging your groceries.
If I'm Nick Saban, I stay in Tuscaloosa. There's no opportunity other than maybe replacing Bill Belichick in New England.
But it's all ego, man. It's all ego. He's an egomaniac.
But why not then continue to be the king of the town? I mean, there's nothing going on in Alabama.
Nobody close to you right now. Who in college football has as many national championships as him? Who has done it the way he has done it? Who is better than him? There's nobody. In a 7-year span, he won 4 national championships. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In 7 years, he won 4 national champions. And the years that he didn't win national championships, they were still in contention.
Now, the factor that may lead him to decide to go to the NFL is the pressure at Alabama. The pressure is so great because that's the only thing going, and the expectation is so raised, and we're starting to try to see that now for Michigan State in terms of raising the bar, raising the expectation. If they lose a game, it's like the end of the world. There's pressure now at Alabama that if you don't win the national title for 2 years, all that he's built up goes away, and there's hate. I mean, basically sports radio in Alabama is just talk about Alabama football, what happened to the loss, why did they lose, why aren't they winning? And the pressure can get to you, of course. I can see that.
Do you realize there was talk about him possibly needing to be replaced after week 3 of the college football season?
Exactly.
It's insane down there.
That is some kind of pressure that you and I probably will never get to experience on that level. So I can understand it, but he's risen to the occasion with that pressure. I mean, you had a 1-loss team. You lost to Ole Miss, and you didn't have your starting quarterback. You replace him. You bring in Coker, and you got the Heisman Trophy winner, and the class coming back. Oh, my God, dude. Alabama's stacked. I would stay and ride the train forever and let them boot you out. I mean, you're going to have statues. You're going to be the king of the town.
He has statues.
You're going to have more statues.
We need to have a Doc and Jock statue out here.
We should, right?
It's what we need. Every day when we come into work, we can sit there and see ourselves just bronzed and golden.
That's good. Oh man,
dude! But think about this, right? Just dream with me, if you will.
Okay.
Let me paint a picture for you. sitting there up behind a podium with all the reporters' voice recorders and microphones sticking out of the podium all over the place, just strewned about. I like that word, strewned. All right, behind you, or behind him, I should say, there's a giant Meyer logoed Detroit Lions wallpaper, and you've got Nick Saban wearing a Honolulu blue polo, similar to the one you've got on right now, sitting there pounding on the podium, telling you how a can of Diet Coke has more intelligence than the reporters in the room. How entertaining would this be? It would give us so much to talk about. It'd be amazing. I would love it. Oh, God, it would be great. Nick Saban, angry Nick Saban is incredible. I love angry Nick Saban.
Listen, man, if he comes to the Lions, do you see him having success? I mean, he would build a strong defense. He'd have an organized system. But in terms of being the best National Football League coach, I just think that he's maybe in that second tier of maybe 5 through 10, not in the top 5 in terms of coaches.
Let me paint this picture for you, all right? You have a guy who has been picked from the Belichick tree with Bob Quinn, and you have a guy who learned his craft and learned, I think, some of his orneriness from Belichick because he was another one of those disciples of Bill Belichick. So I think this would be a perfect marriage. I think they get each other. I think they understand where they're both at. I think they both know where they're at in their careers and what has to happen. And I think they both realize that you have to have it working both ways. The head coach has to work with the general manager, and the general manager has to work with the head coach. And that's the only way things are successful. And you have to take each other's opinions into account, as well as your scouting department, which is something I think the previous regimes didn't do. I don't think they worked with the head coaches. They didn't listen to the scouting departments. They kind of went off on their own and just went AWOL and said, hey, let's take a tight end with our 10th overall pick, because that's a great idea when we've got a future Pro Bowl defensive tackle out there, or we've got a stud wide receiver who will then replace a guy who may need to retire in a year or two, Calvin Johnson. Do you know what I'm saying?
Listen, I look at it like this. There's some times where there are coaches that are made for certain situations. Nick Saban is made to be a college coach. The age range of players that he can control, 18 to 22, it's different nowadays in the NFL. The NFL, you can lose a team rather quickly with your attitude and your bravado. I don't see Nick Saban going into a room full of grown adult-ass men and leading them into victory. I see him being able to walk into a young recruit's home, have that respect as a college coach, and he can look at a college player and say, listen, you're not going to play for me if you don't do X, Y, and Z. Dude, in the NFL, you look at someone cross-eyed, they're probably going to Twitter, TMZ, and, making up nonsense. So I think you have to have a certain makeup as a coach to be able to deal with this generation's players. And I just feel like Nick Saban knows his strengths, and why on earth would you leave that cushy situation, deal with the pressure, ask for whatever money you want. You're going to be the king of the town. You're going to be, a guy that's going to be revered and talked about a la Bear Bryant.
Because you're a coaching maniac. And that's the one thing on your resume that looks like
I'll just say,
pile of turd.
If he returns to the NFL, I just hope it's not with the Lions then.
Really?
I want NFL experience in terms of at least having the wherewithal to manage a team that and have success at the NFL level, and that's what the Lions are going to need. Because remember, this is the Lions. Let me do this. It might take a superhuman feat to get them.
Carroll. Mm-hmm. Pete Carroll was a disaster with both the Jets and the Patriots. He was garbage. Goes to USC, kind of gets it figured out a little bit. And you're right, he's a much different cat than Nick Saban is. Nick Saban's a very intense guy, always on. Pete Carroll's more of a let's have fun. Let me slip a couple $100 in your pocket, and we're gonna get Snoop Dogg in here to roll some blunts with you. Totally different guy, totally different dude. But if we went by what you're saying, Pete Carroll would never have got a shot. Pete Carroll wouldn't be in the league right now. I don't think Seattle would be as good of a team as they are if Pete Carroll didn't get that shot, and if we went by what you're saying.
Okay, no, it's true. Pete Carroll's circumstance was a little different in that he was trying to escape some
for sure. That's
allegations of impropriety.
$100 bills, yo.
And they had a great front office, and they built a solid football team. Now, it can happen. Of course, I wouldn't say, that he wouldn't be successful. I just think it's going to take a lot more effort, and I don't think he needs to do it. And I think that it's good speculation. It's a good topic to think about. But in the end, Nick Saban staying with Alabama, it would shock me if he left. It would really shock me, because look at the jobs that are out there now. Where are you going to go? You're going to go to what? The Browns just filled their job with Hugh Jackson. Where are you going to go?
Detroit Lions, bro.
Oh, no.
So where are you going to go? You've got a Belichick disciple who's heading the organization. You can sit there and basically get and demand almost anything you want. You're going to get it. And if you sit there and if you do like I want to do and gut the organization right now, get rid of Calvin, trade Matt Stafford, get some draft picks in here, and just kind of figure it all out. I think Nick Saban's bravado, I think his chomping at the bit, him being, as we say, an egomaniac, I think it might work. I do.
Okay, you've left the thought in my mind to ponder that we could talk about in future episodes as well, but I just don't see it. That's just my thoughts on that.
On Thursday afternoon, I'll be called an idiot by everybody watch.
We'll see. All right, let's take a quick break. What is this, episode 127 of the Detroit Sports Podcast? I believe so.
I've got it written down here. Yeah, 127.
Episode 127, Doc and Jock, Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Stay with us. I want to tell everyone out there about DetroitSportsNation.com. They're a great website, and they've been very supportive to all the shows on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. They host all the podcasts. They have great writers that cover all the Detroit teams, all the college teams. Check out their website and support those who support us. DetroitSportsNation.com. The collaboration has been excellent, and it's helped us to continue to grow and have great guests, take phone calls. So our collaboration with the Detroit Sports Nation has really been successful, and support those who support us. DetroitSportsNation.com. All right, rolling right along here on our podcast. Thank you to everybody that's been supporting us. Thank you to everybody that used that promo code DSP in the month of December. A great month. Our sponsors love us. We love our relationships with our sponsors. Always a big thanks to Fanatic U, Team Top Cat Sales, Detroit Beard Collective. We greatly appreciate those who've taken a chance on us on a project that many people would have said, what? Some internet show? What, are you kidding me? And we've been able to do whatever we wanted now for the better part of 2.5 years, now spanning 127 episodes. So we give back. We love to give thanks. And check out our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast for lots of giveaways. Look for them. We always love to give away stuff to the listeners and supporters of our project. So check out at Detroit Podcast. We read all your tweets, and we're never taking any Twitter breaks. Some of the hosts in town taking years off, not talking to you fans on Twitter. Not us, man. We love it. Every single day is an opportunity to check in with the fans, with the best sports fans in the country, and that's what we do at Detroit Podcast. All right, sir, you got 3 great questions lined up. I know. Let's hear it in what we call the Doctors in Session.
But to be the man, you gotta beat the man, and I'm saying, woo, right here. I'm the man. Woo!
Woo!
All right,
ready.
King of the Couch. We kind of touched on it a little bit before the break, but I need to get your thoughts on the College Football National Championship.
First of all, man, I felt old as hell. About 12:30, my eyes were rolling. I was like, I never felt so tired in my life watching a game that was so exciting. Best college football game of the year, back and forth, 14-14 at half. Both teams there were so many runs and big plays and key moments that it was just a game that I was at first going to say, you know what? I'm not going to check into it. I really don't care. But then I'm like, you know what? It's Alabama, Clemson. Something good's going to happen here. This has a chance to be either a dud or a fabulous game. And in the fourth quarter, it's 24-24, and Nick Saban pulled out the boss move, dude. He put his nuts on the table, as you like to say, and he went with an onside kick. Not even the traditional onside kick where you kick the ball on the ground, hope for a miracle that it bounces up, that it goes 10 yards. Nope. Dude, they lined up. Kicker just dabbled it straight up in the air. Boom, Alabama caught it. And at first I thought maybe that Dabo Swinney might have had a legitimate complaint in terms of saying, hey, did that ball go 10 yards? Because it looked like live that maybe it didn't go the full 10 yards, but when the replay was shown, it was a great play, and he had the stones to do it. And right from there, that was the momentum killer. And then special teams, bro. And it's like kind of a irritant to me being a Sparty supporter going, man, that was the difference in the National College Football Championship game. Onside kick return in a key 24-24 moment. Nick Saban had the balls to do it. He outcoached Dabo Swinney, and the special teams. You got that kickoff return, and all time, that was a good top 10 game, and I loved watching it. I had a hard time staying awake through it, though, after a long day and things like that, but I'm glad I did. I loved watching it. It was I really felt like it was a pleasure watching it. I just wish they would have started at maybe 6:30, 7 o'clock.
It was a great game. You're right. They absolutely started it way too late, but it was an incredible game. Let me put it to you like this. My wife was so hooked on watching the game that we sat there, we moved from the couch to the bedroom to go to sleep, and she wouldn't let me change it. That's how good of a game it is. When your wife is all into it, and she's like, we can't change this, we got to watch this. It's a good game. And it was a great game. All right, moving on. What were you were hypercritical on Twitter. You were hypercritical, especially of this guy. What are your thoughts on how the Pittsburgh-Cincinnati wildcard game ended? This is old news, but I want to talk about it. So what were your thoughts on how that game ended?
Man, is this what you're talking about, that I was hypercritical about this question?
You weren't hypercritical about this question. You were hypercritical about this guy and certain players on Cincinnati's team.
Yes, because I remember a certain recall when we would talk about the Lions and who they should draft, and you were like, I love this Vontez Burfict. I love this guy. He's great. And, we do another, 2-3 weeks later.
I said he was a maniac, too.
Yeah, you did.
I said he was a nut.
Yeah, and I'd be like, okay, whatever, dude. No, probably not ever going to happen. So then in football, you realize one of the factors that you need to have a successful football team is smart players and smart coaches who make the right decisions at the right times. You in a playoff game, very small things could lead to catastrophic results. So in a playoff game, everything's heightened. If you're not a good in-game manager, like some people that we know,
Jim Caldwell,
then you're going to have some problems in the playoffs when it's tight and you need to make that key play. Cincinnati, what are you doing? Jeremy Hill, hold the damn ball, dude. All you got to do, hold the ball. You win the game. You got A.J. McCarron. You don't got Tom Brady. You don't got Rodgers. He leads you back. You throw that beautiful pass. It was A.J. Green, and he walks right into the end zone. It's all good. It's heaven. It's gravy. You get the ball back. All you got to do is hold the ball. Pittsburgh gets it. Fine. They got to go the length of the field. That's after knocking out Roethlisberger. He comes back, and he's the hero. Vontez Burfict, what are you doing? That's a stupid play. You could say, live that he couldn't stop, but you didn't have to clock Antonio Brown. Fine. Who do you give more blame to? Do you give more blame to Pac-Man Jones or Burfict? Both of them. Both guys made key mistakes that you cannot do in that situation. 30 yards, you basically move them up half the field to make an easy chip shot field goal to end the game. Now, they got lucky to make the field goal. Some other kickers, blew that chance. But I don't roll with guys like Burfict. I don't roll with guys like Pac-Man Jones. There's reasons why. You called him a maniac. You can't win with guys like that, period. Mike Singletary would agree with me. I don't want a guy like that on my team. If he comes up for free agency or trade, I don't want him, because you do it once, you're going to do it again. And in Lions history, it'll come up in the Super Bowl. We're up 24-0, and all of a sudden, buffoonery takes place, and this guy probably be a part of it. I was pissed. I was like, wow, what a ridiculous display of stupid football that really should have cost Marvin Lewis his job. Dude, okay, good. You got him to the playoffs this many times. It's time to move on.
He's 0-7, bro.
It's time to move on.
When I was watching the game, I legitimately thought that Vontez Burfict killed Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
I was like, Brown is dead.
Yeah.
Somebody called the EMS. He's dead. Like, he's done. I legitimately thought he died because of that hit. That hit was nasty. It was gnarly. And you watch it real time, and you're like, well, maybe he couldn't slow up. But then you sit there and you take a step back and you look. He ran like an extra 4 or 5 yards out of his way to just light him up. He could have put the brakes on. He could have attempted to swerve. There was no attempt to swerve. Vontez Burfict, who I was very high on when he was drafted, I said he would be a great 6th or 7th round pick. He ended up going into free agency, and he was signed by Cincinnati. He was given a shot because he had a lot of off-the-field issues, because he's a complete lunatic. But I think he's an outstanding football player. The guy is incredible. You got to realize he was an undrafted free agent who is almost the face of that defense, at least that linebacking core. Right now he is anyways. But the guy's a monster. He can play. And I thought you risk a 6th or 7th round draft pick. How much better does he make that Lions defense look? They look nastier than ever. I mean, you couldn't have him and Ndamukong Suh playing together because they would go kill somebody right there in the middle of the 50-yard line, and they would just string them up by their insides. But whatever. It was gnarly. I put more blame on Adam Jones and the way that he reacted. He was basically right on top of the official as he was poking and jabbing at the other Cincinnati players and coaches, and then sitting there screaming at the Pittsburgh players. I put more on Adam Jones because now what you did was you took what was a 50-yard field goal and you moved it up to a 35-yard field goal. And you're right, that essentially is just out of extra point land. It's like a chip shot. So especially for Pittsburgh at this point in the season, they've been nailing these all year after they got their whole kicking situation figured out. So I put more of it on Adam Jones. Vontez Burfict, you're an idiot for doing what you did. I still think you're a great talent, and if the Lions drafted you, I'd love you. But that's beside the point. Adam Jones is a knucklehead. I put more of it on him. Let's move on. All right, coming out of the wild card weekend, what was your takeaway on what the Lions must do to get to that level to where they can sit there and they can compete and win on wild card weekend?
Does everything count? You watch the games and
That's an answer. Yeah, that works, man.
all four road teams won. What a shocker. Really, Minnesota did enough to win the game. That was a stroke of luck, and you leave it to the kicker, and he doesn't make a chip shot. Laces out. I guess that's all you can say about that.
Laces out, Dan. Laces out.
That's all you got to remember in that situation. But the Lions, what they got to do, and when I was thinking about a little bit about, when I was thinking about the Lions, reading up on some articles, I really felt like a word that came to my mind, and one I want to talk about a little bit, is leadership. What the Lions need is, when you look at teams like Baltimore, who had recent success, you had a leader like Ray Lewis, who would, and when you watch NFL films, you would see him, and he'd be out there barking. He'd be out there, in these guys' faces and telling them, listen, we got to be able to, handle the pressure and make the right choices in the key situations. Who's the leader on the Lions? Who has the cachet enough to go up to anybody and say squat? Matthew Stafford came up to me. I just look at him all cross-eyed and be like, what have you done? Besides cash big checks. Who on the Lions commands that respect? So when you say, what do the Lions need? They need guys that are leaders on both sides of the ball, that can lead a team and not make silly mistakes in crunch time. The big issue with NFL teams is, in crunch time, how do you handle adversity? What happens when the pressure's on, when the heat's on, and you got to make that key choice? What's going to happen in a tie game, or you're down 2 or 3 points with 2 minutes left? Are you going to take that offside penalty, or that delay a game penalty? Are you going to make the key play? You need that leader, and you need that team that's going to be able to make the key plays at the key moments, at the right times, and be able to lead a football team. The Lions lack leadership, and they lack talented enough players to win a playoff game. They're not nowhere near a successful team right now, and I'm hoping Bob Quinn can identify someone and some leaders on this team that can take this Lions team from where they are now to be able to go into the road, maybe go into a Seattle, go into a New Orleans, go into Green Bay, and handle your business. Because you're going to have to face some tough teams in the playoffs, and in those key moments, the difference is the 1 or 2 key plays that'll determine your success or failure. Leadership and talent, baby. We need it. We need everything.
All right, you want a bonus question?
Sure, let's go.
All right. So the St. Louis Rams are moving again. They will now head over to Los Angeles to become, I'm guessing, the Los Angeles Rams.
Is that right?
What are your thoughts on how that whole situation kind of played out? Oh, okay.
The Rams left. Whoop-de-doo. I mean, they've been ping-ponging between the St. Louis Rams to the L.A. Rams, from Oakland to St. Louis to L.A. There should be a team in L.A. all the time. It's a big market. You have to have a team in L.A. And did you see the initial layouts of the stadium? It's going to cost 2 times as much as Jerry World. A $2.3 billion stadium? It looks amazing.
The grounds look insane.
Insane. All right, good for LA. You got yourself a team. You may be getting yourself another team, but it sucks
good for Stan Kroenke.
It sucks for St. Louis. I mean, you supported a football team, and really, in the end, they struggled. I mean, you had talented football players, but they ended up leaving, and you didn't have too much success there. So it sucks. And it sucks too, as they left, that you get dirt rubbed in the wound by your owner saying that St. Louis is just a 2-sport town. Really? That's really a slap in the face to all the fans that supported you. But in the end, we're passionate about the Lions. We're passionate about the Detroit teams. But the one realization that you got to realize is, if a town like Denver, a town like L.A., if they showed the Lions $5 billion to come, they'd leave. It's a money business, baby. You show me the green, any organization's going to leave. If the Lions did not get Ford Field, they probably would have left. If they didn't get public dollars and they didn't get what they wanted, I mean, lots of stories about NFL teams who hold up cities with these demands and, if you don't give me this and that, we leaving, we out. So as much as you're loyal to the team, there's that little 5% you got to keep in the back of your mind. The owners are all about that dollar, baby. And if the dollar is, if you're getting love and dollars shown somewhere else, your team's going to be bouncing. That's the way it is. So tough shit for St. Louis. That's the way it is.
Yeah, just, you know what? I'll give you a little bit of my thoughts on the entire thing. The way Stan Kroenke kind of handled it, it seems like there was a shady deal that occurred, but the owners voted 30-2 to sit there and let them move to L.A., which I think that there was some good business that Kroenke did, especially for the NFL and for his industry and what he wants to do. So I think for him, good for him. I think bad for St. Louis. It really sucks. If you look at it from a St. Louis perspective, you get a generational talent with Todd Gurley, and you get him for a season, and now he's gone. And that's a guy that you could have built your franchise around in that location and got a ton of love. Now he's going to go to LA, and he'll probably get a little bit more love, maybe not. It's weird. LA sports fans are kind of finicky. They're more interested in rollerblading up and down by the pier than they are what's actually going on the football field, if you ask me, but that's for another day, different time. But just interesting how it all played out, and the domino effect that it has on Oakland and on San Diego is really interesting, and how those two stories are going to unfold over the course of the next 18 months is going to be really interesting.
Doctors in session every other week or so. Look for it. You know you get the hot sports take here, Detroit Sports Podcast. All right, cuz I was right barely, because Minnesota, played in the Ice Bowl, and they were able to come away victorious.
Did not take into effect that it was going to be negative 30-some degrees there.
Yeah.
Did not factor that into my opinion.
So going into the NFL Pick'em Challenge, I'm up 43-42. Now, the question is, as you're listening, does Doc take strategy? Because Adams picked first. So we shall see. Tune in. Pay attention right now in what we call the NFL Pick'em Challenge. Let's go. Who you got? First game, Kansas City at New England. Kansas City is a 5-point underdog.
I'm going to take Kansas City. I think New England will probably win this game, but I'm going to take Kansas City in the points here. I think they win it.
You realize that they've been a little bit underrated, under the radar. They haven't lost since mid-November.
I know.
That's
They've won
a
like
good
11
team.
games straight.
But I look for New England to play a solid game. I agree with you. It's going to be close. This could be a nice fourth quarter game. It should be tight there in New England. So give me, with my first pick as well, Kansas City +5.
All right, next game, Green Bay at Arizona. The spread is 7. Green Bay is getting 7. I'm going to take Arizona, though. I'm going to lay the 7 points. I think it was a miracle that Green Bay escaped with a victory last week. So now you're going to travel to Arizona? Arizona can put up points real quick. And you remember what happened last time these two teams played. This started the demise of Green Bay and all this talk about who's going to be blown out as a head coach and who's going to be fired as a general manager. And has Aaron Rodgers really lost it? And what's going on with that offensive line? So I think Arizona does it again, and I think they win by 8.
Okay. Am I a tool? Would I just copy you even though I disagree? Hell no. I'll make my choice. I'll take a stand. I think that a week off sometimes may hurt your team in terms of momentum. I like the fact that Green Bay did struggle at first on the road versus Washington, and then they flipped that switch. A team like that, you got to be wary of. If Eddie Lacy kicks it into gear, if Aaron Rodgers is the old Aaron Rodgers, it's that right time of year where he may transform himself from Olivia Munn's boyfriend to the king NFL stud, Aaron Rodgers. I think it's that time. I think it's the time that he may be playing that disrespect card, and he wants to really put forth a good effort. So I'm going to take Green Bay +7. Give me the points.
All right, next game, Seattle at Carolina. Seattle just won that game. Seattle got a God's gift, but Seattle's been hot, real hot, since probably the middle of the season. Probably one of the hottest teams out there. Seattle's going to travel to Carolina, who's 15-1 going into the season here. The spread's 2.5 points. I'm going to take Seattle plus the 2.5.
Seattle +2.5. Ooh, you think they're going to win the game outright, huh? Pretty close? Oh, okay. Carolina had a great season. That's a tough one, but I'll agree with you. I think Seattle will keep it close. Might be another game that may go into overtime. Maybe an ultra-competitive game, but I wouldn't be surprised if Carolina came out and rolled them. But I'll agree with you. Seattle +2.5.
All right, at the time that we grabbed these lines, Pittsburgh and Denver were even, which is very interesting because this was breaking. We got these lines just as everything was breaking about Ben Roethlisberger's arm, and there's some debate on whether or not he has torn ligaments in his shoulder or not.
Oh, boy.
So, line is set at even. With that being said, I'm always going to go in favor of the home team, and I'm going to go with Denver in this case. Home field advantage is always worth 3. I'm going to lean towards Denver to win this game outright.
Man, how surprising is it that they're going away from Brock Osweiler? They're going to go with Peyton Manning. It's such a tough game to pick. I'll agree with you. My initial reaction is, how's Ben going to be looking this game? How is Antonio Brown going to be? He may not, I know he's, he was in the concussion protocol.
He is, yeah.
So you never know. They might be ultra cautious, but Peyton Manning is going to look for one last swan song. This is a defense that is stout, and you always go with a team with a stellar defense. So I'll agree with you. Denver, baby. Look for a good game. It should be a good week. This is when the playoffs kick off, baby. The divisional round. Must watch, baby. I can't wait for this weekend.
Yeah, this is when it gets real interesting. Those were some decent games last week. Nothing really compared to that nothing compared to the national championship game for a college football. But this is when it gets a little bit interesting. This is when the fire starts to burn a little bit hotter. This is when things kind of get ramped up a little bit, and you really have the best of the best going at each other right now. So this is going to be a good week.
Yeah, you know what? When I win the Powerball, I'm going to buck all the trends and just spend a lot of money. I'm going to get a DSP plane. I'm going to have it detailed with big green and white DSP letters, and I'm going to fly to all the games and sit in the suite for every single game. I'm just going to do that, and I'm going to show up probably on the Tonight Show and David Letterman and I'm gonna not Dave. I'm gonna show up on the Tonight Show. I'm gonna show up on Stephen Colbert's new show. I'm gonna show up on Good Morning America, whatever Today's show. I'm gonna show up there and just, I won the lotto. I need some help. What do I do? And just maybe pass out hundreds to all the fans and just make the tour. Maybe I'm gonna make the rounds. That's what I'm gonna do. Fuck all the trends.
Kiss some babies.
If I have to go in a dramatic fashion, someone wants to attack me or steal my money, why not go out in a blaze of glory? You know what? Spend all the dough, baby. You only live once. Who the hell cares, man? What a great story to tell. You know, the man who blew $1.5 billion.
It's a horrible story to tell.
No, man. Whatever happens, good luck. Everyone out there, whoever may win it, it's going to be a wild ride, 11 o'clock or so. Wherever who I wonder who's going to get it. $1.5 billion. They can't even get it on the billboards. It just says 999 million. They can't put
That's nuts, man.
They can't put 1.5 billion.
Yeah.
How do you put 1.5 billion on a billboard? What are you going to do, man? Here we go.
That's a ton of cash, dude.
Good pod. Good stuff, sir. Everyone out there, thank you for downloading across the various platforms. We greatly appreciate it. You're keeping the lifeblood going in this project. The lights are on. The mics are hot. We love it. Thank you very much. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. This has been another episode on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Go Arizona. Beat them by 8.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I have voices in my head, they counsel me, they understand, they talk to me. They talk to me, they tell me things that I will do, they show me things I'll do you, they talk to me.